What is next? The Jags just did a bunch. Mm-hmm. They fired Mike Caldwell. They hired Ryan Nielsen. They hit a bigger splash in free agency than we thought. They extended Josh Allen. They just went through the draft process. May is going to potentially be an extremely busy month for the Jags on and off the field. Stadium deal, schedules coming out, OTAs on the field, rookie mini camp, get everybody acclimated. I still think the Trevor Lawrence thing could happen in May. I'm not predicting it will happen in May, but it could.
Are they going to unveil the new, like the old school?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know.
As well?
I don't know. Somebody asked about that too, and I don't know if that will be now or later. I'm not sure. Yeah. I don't know when that. I'm trying to think of an event that could be around. That would make sense, but I'm not really sure. So that could happen because we know the throwbacks are coming.
Yes.
And what? So what now? What now for the Jags, for their roster, for anything else? What do you think? Let's talk more of the football side of stuff.
Yeah.
Are the Jags standing pat? I mean, they got 50-year options they exercise. I mean, they go on vacation or what?
No, I mean, they can definitely go on vacation now and breathe a little sigh of relief, if you will. We'll see if that Trevor Lawrence deal gets done this year. Or you have him on the 5th-year option now, obviously, and he wasn't going anywhere regardless. But you have him for a little more time. So do you kind of slow play it? Maybe look out halfway through the season or next year? I mean, time will tell with that. Can you get another guy in free agency? I think the way that it looks right now, Brent, and we've kind of both discussed on this, some needs, some holes, whatever, some depth got addressed in the draft. I would make an argument and say, did edge get addressed? I mean, do you go with an edge rusher, like a veteran edge rusher? Not going to break the bank, obviously, but just another body that can come in here and that can provide you some depth when you need it. That could be a possibility. But what I'll be looking for more than anything now, I think, is, keep in mind, it's OTAs, right? It'll be OTAs in spring ball. So, you're not going to implement the entire defense. You're not going to implement an offense, things like that. But I wonder if we start to hear more now of what's going to happen with Doug Peterson and Press Taylor. Who's going to be calling the plays, right? Because you would think you eventually want to get that, out there in the locker room sooner rather than later. You're not going to wait till, preseason game number 1. Oh, by the way, hey, Trevor, I'm calling plays now. No, I would, if I'm a coach, I want to give my guys as much upfront of, heads up as possible, just because it is a big deal. And Trevor Lawrence even alluded to this. He said it is a big deal if you switch play callers all the time. So if that's truly going to be the plan, and maybe it's not, but if Doug Peterson does plan on calling the plays going forward, well, then I hope he addresses that and they get things situated sooner rather than later.
Yeah, the play calling story, it's fascinating. Mike DeRocco was just texting me about it this morning, just asking when that story started to pop a little bit, and it was at the Combine. And then we asked him a little bit later at the owners' meetings, and that was just so, there wasn't a lot of distance between those two events to really get an answer. And then I think time and place here, they were on the draft. They're not talking about that kind of stuff. But Trevor did talk about it a couple of weeks ago. And when I talked to, I'll just give you my feel on it. When I talked to Doug and asked him that question at the Combine, I was like, oh, he's going to take it back. He's going to call it back.
Yeah.
When we talked to Trevor in April, now this is some 6 weeks later, at least maybe 6-7 weeks. When I talked to Trevor, I was like, they're not changing. There hadn't even been conversations about this. To your point, would there be already conversations? Because he knew the playbook was changing a bit. He said the offense is going to evolve a little bit, but nothing about the play call. And maybe that's a bigger deal to us than it is to him internally. Again, we're some 5 months from a football flying for real, So there's plenty of time for that. And I think he's comfortable. It's not like you're going to bring in a guy and a new voice. It's comfortable with Doug. I do think this is real collaborative to begin with. So I don't know when the time frame is, but I think you bring up a good point. Internally, when is that? Is that going to be at OTAs? Can you wait all the way to camp to make that decision if you're Doug? It would seem like you'd have to make it pretty soon.
Well, and this is kind of my point, Brent, and this is why I'm going to put a little stake here into the OTAs. I mean, theoretically, you could wait till training camp to establish if you're going to be the new play caller or not. But once again, we heard what Trevor said. It's not an easy thing to do to have a new voice in your ear. So I would expect that to get done sooner rather than later. So my biggest thing is, if we don't hear during OTAs, if we don't hear during, the mandatory mini camps, whatever the case may be, if things are the same in terms of the play calling, is that a sign that maybe things just aren't going to change? maybe things will stay the same. Maybe Trevor prefers to have Press Taylor calling the plays.
Yeah. Well, he kind of said he did.
Yeah. Well, but once again, maybe that was more of sticking up for Press Taylor than anything. Like, I mean, I'll take Trevor at his word, no problem. But also, I think Trevor Lawrence does a great job in terms of protecting his guys as well, his coach.
He does. I don't think it's good. I don't know. I don't get the feel it's going to change.
Well, then is that an issue?
Well, yeah, I think it will be an issue in Jacksonville until it's not. Until they go score 30 points a game, it's not. It's going to be an issue. Press Taylor, again, this is the fan perspective of Press Taylor, not the Brent perspective of Press Taylor. The questioning, the everything, I don't totally agree with the fans on Press Taylor. Like, I really don't. Like, I don't put this all on Press Taylor. And I think you're a little bit more harsh on Press Taylor than I am, and that's fine. Like, you can. Maybe you guys are right. I'm just not looking at it through that lens. I look at it through the lens as the better guy to play X position, the better guy to do this in the organization. The better guy to call plays is Doug Peterson. Like, we just know it. That's a fact. The better guy is. So, but I wonder if internally they think that the evolving the playbook, making some changes on offense, the pieces that they added to be able to develop the long game is the fix more than the actual communication relaying of the play. And I'm not telling you they're right. I'm just saying, like, Trevor alluded to that multiple times when he was in front of a microphone a couple weeks back. He alluded to the fact that it's not going to look the same. We found some things. We're doing some things different. He didn't elaborate on it to say exactly what it is. Why would he do that? I don't think that's like, hey, that's calling XYZ play just XY now. Like, I think it was more than that. I think they're stylistically. What I wonder is, are they going to adopt a little bit more of the Shanahan kind of movement on offense, or wrinkle into their scheme to evolve it a little bit, or was it simply just we're going to get some big play guys and we're stretching the field? I don't know what he meant by it. But I feel like internally, there's a stubbornness now around the NFL sometimes that their fix on offense is going to be Mitch Morse, Gabe Davis, Brian Thomas, stretch the field, not Press Taylor.
So, yeah, I hear you. Here's my issue with everything, though, Brent. Okay? And you know it. I know it. The city knows it. I think some players in that locker room know this as well. That Doug Peterson calling plays is the best option for this team to win. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I definitely agree with that.
We're on the same page.
I told
right?
you that.
Yeah, exactly. So we're on the same page here. And yes, I've said time and time again, and once again, you'd agree with me. Trevor Lawrence is the most important piece in this locker room. Love you, Josh Allen, but come on, it's Trevor Lawrence. We all know this, right? With that being said, though, I trust Doug Peterson more than I trust Trevor Lawrence. And the reason why we were so excited when Doug Peterson came to Jacksonville, why we were celebrating over, leaving Urban Meyer and finally getting Doug Peterson, was because of the Super Bowl. That you won a Super Bowl when you probably should have won a Super Bowl. You were the underdog pretty much that entire playoff run. You had a backup quarterback, and you somehow got the job done, right? And it was with you calling the plays. So we've seen what it looks like. Now, I broke this down a lot. Last year, maybe it was the fact of, okay, you didn't have enough leadership. You had to put out some fires here in the locker room. You kind of had to, take some players by the hand and lead them along, whatever the case may be. Whatever you want to justify for Doug Peterson not calling the plays last year, then so be it. But now you got guys like Mitch Morse. You got guys like Gabe Davis. You got guys like Eric Armstead. You have the leadership. You have the pieces. You have guys that can hold this locker room to a high expectation. So if I'm Doug Peterson, I feel like, okay, I don't got to hold anybody's hand anymore. I can just wash my hands of it, turn the keys over, and now focus on what I have to do. And the fact that we're not having this conversation still of where, well, maybe it might still be Press Taylor. Well, why? Why would it? And I get what Trevor Lawrence said. Okay, he feels comfortable there. Fine. But Trevor Lawrence, I get you feel comfortable, but do you want to feel comfortable or do you want to be set up for the most success possible? Because we both know that's what Doug Peterson calling the plays. So if I'm having this conversation, you'd think Shad Khan at least has this conversation a little bit. You're the owner of the team, for crying out loud. I just question of the locker room seems to be intact now. You have good guys coming in. I think you drafted some dogs as well in this draft who are going to contribute. So what else am I missing then in terms of why Doug Peterson wouldn't call the plays?
Yeah, I think two things that I'm just trying to think around this story, because again, we agree. I think a lot of people, again, we come at different angles, not you and me necessarily, but especially the fans. The fans come at it as get Press out of here. I come at it as your strength is in Doug. And I think you just basically said that.
Correct.
So, and either way, we come to the same solution. And it is, let's get Doug calling the plays. I think I'd feel better about that. I think everybody else would feel better about that. I think the Jags would be better with that. But I think on their side of things, I think there are some things that get made a bigger deal of outside the building than inside the building.
Okay.
And I think this might fall under that. I think the other part of this that you don't have as a fan and we don't have because we don't have the relationship like they do is trust. So Doug has, obviously, if you read all the stuff coming out of Philadelphia over the years, tremendous trust in Press Taylor and belief in Press Taylor. I think Trevor has learned to believe and trust in Press Taylor. I'm sure the offensive guys who have now been around it for a couple, I've never heard bad things about Press Taylor. I don't feel like there's a lot of that going on. So my point is, it might be way bigger of a story outside of Jags headquarters than it is inside. I don't think you're going to have people in team meetings like ETN or Brandon Sheriff or Trevor, for that matter, or Christian Kirk or Ingram raise their hand and be like, hey, why isn't Doug calling plays? Like, I don't think you're getting that. We are, but I don't think they are. Okay. That's my read on it.
No, and
so I
would agree with you.
I don't think if they get to August and Press is calling plays and we're asking questions about it, they're going to be like, "Why you guys?" Like they're basically going to be like, "Why are you guys asking questions about it?" Like you know that when you play, like there's stuff going on outside the building. You're like, "No, what the hell are you even talking about?"
I mean, it was like with the whole Jack Del Rio Mel Tucker stuff. Like who's calling the plays? You know, like eventually Jack relinquished his play calling to Mel Tucker, but like we just played football.
You just played.
We didn't like,
didn't care.
Wow, it's someone else calling. Like, no, it was never like that.
I think that is, that's an important part of this.
It is.
To say inside the building, I think that's how they react to it. There's trust. They have relationships. They have growth. Like, hey, if you were going to go set up this setup tonight, I'm like, hey, cool, I trust you to do it. Mm-hmm. Somebody back in the station might be like, Austin's never done it before.
Yeah, well, don't trust me to do it. But yeah, that's what you're saying.
But you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think I think there's a line there that sometimes we don't win on the outside. Like we don't get it. Now, it doesn't mean we're wrong, because what happens when anything screws up, we're right. Mm-hmm. Now, our job's not on the line. Theirs is. So, but regardless of what happens, this will be a thing that we're going to get stuck on. We've already been stuck on it. I've asked Doug a couple of times. The questions will keep coming. We've talked about it a lot. We think it might be the biggest move you can make on offense this year is to make that move. We think it's a big deal. But the bottom line is if he decides to take the plays, we're cool. Take the play call. If he doesn't, we really don't know if it's the right decision until about a month into the year.
Yeah, you'll find out pretty quickly.
We'll find out. Mm-hmm. We found out pretty quick. Again, that's why what he did, however that unfolded last year, from the morning of the opener to about a month into the season, this backfired. It not only backfired that he gave play calling duties to Press, it backfired that it was publicized like the way it was. Like it should have been something that was publicized back in August or just never publicized. And nobody would have even known or questioned it, is my guess. Like we would have made it till like October, asked Doug about the offense, and maybe somehow fell upon the idea that Press was calling plays. We would have probably all assumed that Doug was calling the plays.
Yeah, correct.
But they publicized it. It was such a backfire move that now it's become really one of the huge topics in Jacksonville. If you look at it over the last year, Press Taylor was a massive topic. I think he was a little bit of a fan scapegoat last year, but he was a massive topic, and it continues to be a pretty big topic this offseason to the point where we're still talking about it. We're waiting on it, and we think it could be one of the biggest moves they make this offseason. So that's how they set the table for this thing. And I don't think he's going to come out and tell us in the next month. I think the earliest he would tell us is probably right around preseason game number 1 time. Okay. I think that's when it would become public, unless he just wants to say, we're not doing it. Well, you could find out the next month is Press is the guy.
Yeah.
And deal with it.
Yeah, sure.
It's basically what he's going to say. And then we sit and wait and see how they produce.
Yeah.
That will be it. That's how the story goes. Like, there's 2 ways for this really 3 ways for it to unfold, but a lot of it ends up at the doorstep of the football season and about 4 games in, and we look at how this offense is going. And the offense scoring 28 points a game, and it looks like it's clicking, we're hitting big plays, and nobody gives a damn who's calling plays.
Correct.
But if it stutters out of the gate like it kind of did last year, and stutters at other times, then it's
scapegoat to point the finger at it.
But I'm telling you, fans, if that happens and Press is the play caller, I don't think the scapegoat is Press. It's on Doug.
No, that's on Doug then. Yeah. Well, and also, and I get, like, one thing I do like about Shad Khan is, like, he's not necessarily an X's and O's guy, right? Like, I feel like he hires the right people, and then he watches his, I say watch that, but like, he just takes a step aside and says, you guys run this.
He doesn't get in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, once again, this is all speculative, but let's just say that Press Taylor does call the plays again, and maybe it looks a lot like it did last year. I mean, if you're Shad Khan, then how much does that fall on you as well? Because, listen, Shad Khan might be a casual when it comes to the X's and O's, but he understands what Doug Peterson did at Philadelphia.
Yeah.
He understands how good of a play caller he is. How much does it fall on ownership to step up and say, hey, I watched you in Philadelphia do this, and it worked out pretty well. I have a guy in Trevor Lawrence who, let's give him all the help that he can get. Why aren't you calling the play?
Listen, I've been saying this since the day I asked the question at the Combine. The question I asked at the Combine is one I hope Shad Khan has asked or will ask or does ask or whatever. I think that's part of his responsibility, quite frankly. You don't have to ask it I don't think I asked it in a negative tone. In fact, I asked it in a very positive way toward Doug and less negative about Press. And I think you could do the same thing if you're Shad. Now, there comes a time where, like, we're not liking the answer. Shad might accept the answer more willingly than we are, because he's going to lean on Doug's expertise and trust. And the bottom line is, and Shad knows this, if Doug's leaning on Press, he's putting his job on the line too, then doing it. Mm-hmm. Or at least this season on the line a little bit doing it. But Doug makes decisions, those big decisions, and he's got to live with that, and we'll see the results of it. So, yes, but I agree with you, man. I think it is part Shad's job as owner of this football team, and I have not, like, some people are critical of whether he's here or there or wherever. Like, that's not it for me. But I do think he's a great listener. He's been involved way more over the last handful of years. I think he absolutely knows what's going on for the most part inside that stadium. In this situation, I think they're all on the same page. But I hope that question has been asked, and he got a good enough answer that's satisfactory. What I don't see Shad doing is if he got asked, he asked the answer, he got the response he didn't like, he's not the guy that's going to be like, well, damn it, you better call plays.
Yeah.
I don't see that.
No.
I just don't. That's not it. Tepper, maybe he acts that way. Maybe Jerry Jones would act that way.
Yeah.
But I don't think Shad's acting that way. He's just going to be like, all right, I don't really agree with that.
But if you said,
but this is going to be on you now.
Yeah.
You made your bet.
Yeah.
And now we all know, right? And now let's see how it goes. And then Doug's got to be obviously convicted enough, trusted enough in press. To me, that's how this whole thing unravels. And obviously the proof is in the results.